It was a chair without an ottoman, but it was, a big enough chair for like 1.5 people. So I slept in a chair for 4 weeks. After sleeping in my car, it felt okay. Just like
wow.
I got a storage unit and I put my stuff in the storage unit and I, slept in the car and slept at a friend's house. You don't give up. Like, people are going to tell you no. And you just knock the door down. Like, you don't sit. My rule was I had too much to prove to myself that I could do it, right? I had too much to prove. I felt like I had to prove it to my parents. Not that they care or notice. I had to prove it to like everyone who'd ever told me no. But really all those demons were sort of inside me. Like, none of these people care if I ever made it. Only I cared if I made it. And if I saw too many people in the first 6 months of living in Los Angeles leave and go home,
I know, isn't that crazy?
It's crazy. And these were people whose parents were paying their rent. So I was like, oh, Jesus, if you are leaving and your rent is being paid, like, I don't even know why I'm here. I mean, I remember there were times I couldn't afford groceries and I had no place to go. So I would go into the supermarket and I would take like 6 chocolate covered almonds from the bulk bin and put them in my hand and then put them in my pocket. And then I'd go buy peanut butter and I would put them in the peanut butter and I could have, eaten my car. Like, it was really, when I look back on it though, it's kind of funny. Like, it's a little bit funny. It's like, it's a little bit funny to think about. Like, I looked 12 to see this little 12-year-old looking girl in the front seat of her car with stolen chocolate almonds and peanut butter. A little bit funny.
Yeah. So then tell me about the first time that you actually booked a gig and what that was like. That must have been hugely validating. I don't know. Tell me about it.
Yeah. So I had booked a bunch of small gigs. I had booked a bunch of, will you do this for free gigs, which was always, I felt flattered. I was like, sure. And now I look back and go, how many women said no? Because I had read this article in Backstage with an actor. I can't remember who he is at the moment, but I didn't realize had made it, since he was like 20. And at the time that he did this interview, he was 70. But in his interview, he said, always say yes. I don't care if you're not getting paid for it. Always say yes and somebody will notice, which is bullshit. Women, that's bullshit. Demand your worth, period. Like, it's not okay not to pay an actor. It's not okay not to pay a writer. So anyways, I was saying yes to a bunch of small budget, low things that I didn't get paid for. But I would say one of the first big things that I got was, this is actually a failure, but it's a good one. I booked with a couple of other big actors a show called Bookbeat that never ended up being made because the executive producer and creator of the show stole all I want to say it was Paramount's money. I've blocked a lot of it out at this point and went out to Australia. And apparently, like, there's this big manhunt for him and you can look him up online and follow all the like crazy hoax he's pulled in his lifetime. And he's finally in jail for it right now, but he only got 3 years. But anyways, I booked a hosting gig on his show, and which was really cool. And I was like with these big actors and I was with the makeup artist and I actually interviewed 2 big time authors and it was really cool. And the show never ended up though going past that, but it was pretty cool. And my manager was like super impressed because I had, beat out all these other people that she had also submitted. And it just shows you like your manager never believes it.
Well, how did you get your manager from just starting out? That's not an easy feat.
Yeah. And managers and agents were all from my first one ever that I got. I did a bunch of self-submissions to agents. I went to Samuel French bookstore, bought the book of current agents.
Yes.
And
did you mail it in the 9x11 mail?
9x11, and you can't lick that closed. You're only allowed to, button it closed. So I had done that and I stood in line like it was American Idol to audition for the one agent that responded. And she took out of, the hundreds of us that were in line like a cattle call, she accepted 11 of us. And I happened to be one of them, which was great. And she would book me on these little hosting gigs because everyone booked me or put me out on hosting things because I was with the auto show. So I knew how to do
and
hosting.
The news experience, probably.
And the news experience. Yeah. And I was a journalist. Yeah. So I was always, and I was like, but I want to be an actor. So yeah, so I booked a bunch of little hosting gigs, non-union stuff because I wasn't in the union yet. And then she sort of like, I didn't want to be with her anymore. And everyone said, well, don't drop her because she was sending me on stuff that was like, it wasn't acting. And I was starting to feel a little sleazy because she'd be like, hey, I'm going to send you, do you have an evening gown? And I would like, no, can you borrow one? I probably, well, you're going to do this hosting gig for like, the San Diego Chargers at this hotel, and you're just going to stand there and be pretty. And I was like,
no.
That's when I left her, and I was like, I'm done.
It's so funny how people always, there's this fear or lack mentality where people are like, you shouldn't fire your agent until you get a new one and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, that's not true. You don't keep your crappy boyfriend because you're waiting for a good boyfriend. You have to like clear out the bad in order to have the good stuff come to you, right?
I 100% agree with that. I think that is something that we should talk about is there's a lot of myths around how you're supposed to do things. And I think like you had asked this question, you had mailed it to me and I can't, one of my biggest failures or mistakes one of my biggest failures in this business was listening to other people tell me what to do. I have made more bad decisions based on what other people have told me to do versus listening to my instincts. Always listen to your instincts. This is the one thing that people should know about, especially the acting business, is that you aren't the product. You're an actor selling a product. You are a visual aid to the product that's being sold, which is usually ad space. And it's not you. So anything anybody ever says to you should be meaningless, because you're being treated as like a doll or like a box, right? Like you are basically, a plant, you're set decoration. So it's just like, it is what it is. And you could find a lot of fulfillment in acting. I found a lot of fulfillment in acting, mostly being on stage versus being on TV. But
me too.
Yeah. I mean,
people always say, "Why did you quit acting?" I'm like, I didn't quit acting. I'll be in a theater show any day of the week. I love theater because it's fulfilling. I actually get to do the work. But right. I mean, unless you're like a huge star on TV, I guess it's like a lot of just like you could be a cardboard box, right. Standing there and you got to wait around for 10 hours before you get to be the cardboard box. And it's just like, that's not fun. For me, it wasn't
right.
fun.
It wasn't fun for me either. I mean, every time I would book something, I'd be excited. And then I would get there and I would just be so let down by it all. It was like, oh, well, this sucks. And how many times can I say the same line and it comes out like, oh, could you say that? Could you wait, let's take that line again. And this time I want you to say it like you are a 40-year-old woman with lead in your boots. And this is when I was like 25. And I was like, I don't know what that means. Like there's enough lead I slept in my car last night. What do you mean?
I think that happens a lot more in comedy. They'll give you notes and stuff. But I found in like more dramatic stuff that what was really unnerving about it to me is they wouldn't give you any notes. They'd show up and you just be expected to like just do it, and you weren't sure if it was not right, but like, am I in the right direction here? But they just assume you're going to do it. Comedy is the other, and I didn't like that either. With people giving me a million notes, I didn't like that. I didn't like either way.
I agree, and I realized from that, and I was always a writer, but I was dividing my time between focusing on writing and focusing on acting. So at Groundlings, I focused on acting, improv, and sketch. At Second City, I went through the writing program. At UCB, I did both because I never knew who I was, because I'd been told as an actress, all my agents and managers were like, never tell them you're a writer. Never tell them. They don't want to know that. And
now that's like the thing. There's a lot of actors who write their own shows,
They would have me delete it from my resume. And I remember going out for this group that I ended up being in, Boom Chick Boom. And I was going out as an actress to be a part of their sketch show. And I'm very grateful for this group. I'm very grateful. It was a group of very talented women. You can see their work today still. They were awesome, very, very talented. But I went out and I auditioned and they said to me, and it was all women in the room. And they said to me, do you write? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, did you write the piece you just performed? And I was like, yeah. And they were like, so you're a writer? And I was like, yeah. And I was hesitant because I'd always been told to say no. Say no. If they ask you, say no. If they ask you, say no. And this was the first time I'd said yes. And I booked it. And I wrote for them. And I got to play in front of the camera and on stage with them. And like, it changed. That was my changing point where I was like, I'm a writer. And then I met my husband at the same time. And he was like, oh, you're a writer, aren't you? And he came and saw me do stand up. And my stand up coach was like, yeah, you should keep writing. You should keep writing. And it was it wasn't that they were telling me I should stop acting. It was that they were like, you have the right thing to say. Say it. Keep saying it. Keep putting it down. It's very different. Like it sometimes people can take that as like, oh, you think I'm bad at acting? So you think I should just write? Are you telling me to quit? And that's not what it is at all. They saw the potential in something that they had not seen, and they wanted me to know that. And that meant everything to me. It like helped me form a new direction, and I've never been happier. And I think that that's important, so my biggest failure was listening to other people. And when I finally stopped doing that and listened to myself and took to heart, heard what the good people were saying, everything changed.
Yeah. It's so funny because actors always want to, just pet me and tell me I'm good, or, tell me what to do. And well, I don't know if it's just actors, maybe it's just in general, but yeah, no one knows better than you. If you listen inside yourself, you know the answer to whatever it is,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
Wow.
It's true. And women don't do things for free. Stop doing things for free.
Well, maybe like, if you just make it to Hollywood and you're, going to be an extra or something in something just to like be on a set for the first time, I don't think that's bad. Even acting in like a film or two, like when you're just starting out for like a low budget thing, fine. But yeah, you don't want to do that long term.
Listen,
yeah.
There's a difference between free and money. When I say free, make sure that they're getting you SAG credit. Like, listen.
SAG credit and tape that you can use for your reel,
Yeah. And make sure that they're going to, honor something in return is the point. Like, don't just go do something, show up, and then go home and
not get anything.
Yeah. You've contributed to a project. You now have that, so utilize that, so do that. I mean, I can't tell you how many things did not give me, I never got tape for almost any of the independent projects I did, even though I was supposed to.
Wow.
Half of them they didn't even report to SAG, and there's no IMDb credits. So, these are things that you can demand, like I want to make sure that you get this project on IMDb. These are easy things for them to do. And that's basically what I mean. Like, don't do it for free. Don't, make sure you're getting
You have to get something out of it.
Yeah,
totally. And so then when did you actually be like, I'm going to write a novel right now? Like how long after the change did that happen?
That happened before the change. I wrote my first novel. So, okay. My first novel, I had been writing since college, middle school, high school. I don't know, but I would write all these things. So I have 3 large boxes of scrap paper with like one line on them, just one line. And I was like, oh, and I'd write a line down and I would put it in a folder, put it in a purse, put it in a wallet, and eventually a box where I would collect them all. And I still have them all. When I was at my makeup job, we had these big tissue paper type things where you set the makeup on to help someone. I have pads of prescriptives. It's like rice paper almost, where I've written paragraphs and pages on that go to nothing. And I fold it up and I put it in a box. So I have all of these things, I had a job. I ended up getting a day job at Nestle. It started as a temp and turned into a full-time gig writing, but it was in packaging design. So I would be at that job and I would be thinking of things and I would write it on Nestle head and put it in a purse. So I started writing a blog, and I would write, I think I was 28 when I started, and I would write 1 page of a book on this blog and I would post it, eBlogger, I think it was called. And I still have it all. And it was called 365 days. And it was 365 days, and it was 2 women in an apartment for 365 days. And it was a psychological thriller, and it was based on real life. It was my life and my terrible female. And I eventually had over 3,000 readers on my blog. And I never, ever, Facebook was just starting. I was not a MySpacer. So I wasn't promoting it. But I would get phone calls and emails, and people would be like, oh my God, are you okay? What's happening? What happens next? Where is she going? People were really upset. And I was like, oh shit. And I had 270 pages written. And so I ended up, I still have it, but it's closed, so you can't read it. And I ended up over the course of the next, I was probably 30 when I started it. Yes, 30. Because over the next 7 years, wrote 3 drafts of it and quit my job Job at
That's a
Netflix.
solid plan. I'm going to quit my job and revise a book.
Job. I had been working since I was 9 years old. I've been working since I was 9.
You deserve it. Yeah.
And my husband was like, I have not been working